The Galactic Plaza smelled of metal polish and fried algae. On slow nights, when most of the crowd had already gone home, the echoes of footsteps mixed with the faint hum of neon signs. Ivy Scott dragged her mop bucket along the slick tiles of Corridor E12, humming under her breath. Her uniform wasn't glamorous gray jumpsuit, name tag half scratched, but she wore it with a kind of stubborn pride you'd expect from someone who knew every corner of the place better than its architects. She could tell you which automatic door stuck when humidity hit 40%, which vendor cheated on trash sorting, and which ventilation unit always coughed like an old smoker. Shift log, day 2147, Ivy muttered. Clicking the recorder clipped to her belt. 2 gum stains removed. 1 suspicious puddle near docking gate. Smelled like burnt coolant mixed with soy sauce. 10 credits, it's from the new ramen kiosk. Her voice bounced softly against the corridor walls. The device wasn't official, just a cheap XR7 memo recorder she bought secondhand. But talking to it made the long nights less lonely. Somewhere above, a distant vibration rattled the panels. Cargo drones unloading. She could tell the difference. Series 90s made a sharp whine, while the older 70s had a throaty buzz. Tonight, it was the BUZZ. She smiled to herself, proud of knowing something most shoppers never even noticed. Ivy pushed her mop into the storage closet near the main atrium. She pulled out a rag and a small tin of cleaner, then rubbed at a stubborn streak on the wall. The smell of citrus mixed with the sharper scent of ozone, drifting down from the hoload projectors. Humans always polishing surfaces, a voice said behind her, smooth, precise, with a rhythm like ticking clockwork. Ivy turned, rag still in hand. Standing there was Maze, the plaza systems coordinator, tall, thin, skin shimmering in orderly geometric patterns that shifted subtly with each movement. The alien always carried a tablet tucked under one arm, eyes scanning data streams invisible to anyone else. You again, Ivy said, wiping her hands on her jumpsuit. Shouldn't you be babysitting the firewalls, or whatever you do? Systems optimization, Maze corrected, brows furrowing in annoyance. And yes, except tonight, I cannot. A corrupted protocol tree has collapsed 2 subroutines. The navigation signage is misdirecting customers. 3 individuals already circled Corridor G repeatedly. One was on the verge of panic. Ivy chuckled. So basically, your big fancy software got drunk and can't tell left from right? Maze tilted their head, unimpressed. That is not inaccurate. For a moment, they stood in awkward silence. A sound of a vending machine, humming nearby, filled the gap. Ivy smelled the faint artificial strawberry scent it released every time it cycled refrigeration. You telling me this why? She finally asked. Because the emergency patch failed. Maze's voice tightened, every syllable sharp. I require assistance. Ivy laughed out loud. A sound echoed down the empty hall. You're kidding. You want help from the janitor? Maze's patterns flickered, an embarrassed ripple. Not want, require. All official tech staff are offline until dawn shift. Response time is critical, and you are present. Ivy leaned against her mop, squinting. You're desperate. Yes. She snorted. Fine. Show me the drunk. Software. The systems hub was tucked behind an unmarked service door most customers never noticed. Ivy followed Maze inside, the air instantly cooler, sharper with recycled oxygen and faint whiffs of burnt circuitry. Banks of servers lined the walls, their fans whirring in steady rhythms. Light strips blinked in coded patterns she didn't understand, but Maze clearly did. Here, Maze said, pointing at a display. Lines of alien script scrolled, symbols shifting too fast for human eyes to track. Ivy frowned. Looks like my grandma's embroidery machine when it jammed. Same. Angry little scribbles. This is not embroidery, Maze snapped, then took a slow breath, steadying themselves. Corruption spreads. If unchecked, central routing collapses within 40 minutes. Security doors may fail. Docking protocols could misalign. Risk level. Significant. Ivy crossed her arms. And what do you expect me to do? Spray some lemon cleaner on it? Maze tapped their tablet. Frustration clear. I attempted conventional resets. Partition isolations. Nothing stabilizes. I require an unconventional approach. Human intuition may detect patterns my algorithms reject. Her laugh came short this time. So you want me to guess? Yes, but guess effectively. Ivy stared at the mess of symbols. She wasn't a programmer. She barely kept her own vid screen working at home. But she knew stubborn stains, leaky pipes, broken vending machines. Machines had moods. They coughed, squeaked, refused, just like people. She leaned closer to the display. What if it's just stuck like a clogged drain? You keep pouring water. It just builds pressure. You gotta poke it with something stupid, like a hanger. Maze blinked, clearly baffled. Explain, hanger? Never mind. Just trust me. She grabbed the old XR7 recorder from her belt, unplugged its wire, and stuck the jack into a port labeled in alien glyphs. Sparks hissed. The smell of burnt plastic filled the air. Maze yelped, geometric lines flashing red. You cannot. But the scrolling script hiccuped, froze, and restarted slower, steadier, as if the system had paused to breathe. Ivy grinned. See? Sometimes all it needs is a jolt. Maze stared, silent. For once, their perfect order broken by raw confusion. They spent the next hour side by side, Ivy suggesting reckless tricks, Maze translating them into controlled inputs. She compared the system to leaky faucets, squeaky doors, jammed carts. He logged each metaphor with clinical precision, as if adding to some grand manual of human nonsense. When the final subroutine aligned and the signage blinked back to proper directions, Maze let out a sound Ivy had never heard from them. Huff, sigh, half laugh. You improvised, Maze admitted quietly. Illogical, inelegant, effective. Ivy wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her sleeve. The smell of melted plastic still lingered, but the servers hummed in harmony now. Told you, sometimes stupid works. Maze studied her for a long moment. Then, almost reluctantly, perhaps, you are not merely janitor. Ivy smirked. Don't tell my boss. He'll want to pay me extra. They both laughed softly, an unlikely sound in the cold, mechanical hub. For the first time in her long overlooked shifts, Ivy felt like maybe her work mattered in ways no one had ever written in her job description. The next night, the plaza smelled different. Less fried algae, more ionized dust from the docking gates. Ivy could tell something was off before she even clocked in. Her mop bucket rattled harder than usual across the tiles, vibrations running up her arms like a low growl. She reached corridor G, the one Maze said had caused trouble yesterday. The holo sign above flickered, light panels buzzing. It was pointing 3 different directions at once, the glowing arrows jerking like confused birds. Ivy sighed. Guess drunk software wasn't cured after all. A familiar voice behind her. It relapsed. She turned to see Maze, tablet clutched tight, patterns on his skin dimmer than usual. His shoulders, normally squared with precision, drooped under invisible weight. Didn't we fix it? Ivy asked, leaning on her mop. We patched, not repaired. The corruption mutated. Maze tapped his screen. Lines of alien script crawled. Now entire plaza subgrid is unstable. Surveillance feeds loop. Climate control vacillates between humid and arid. And worse, docking synchronization is delayed by 2 seconds. Ivy raised an eyebrow. 2 seconds doesn't sound like a big deal. Maze's eyes narrowed, voice sharp. 2 seconds is eternity in orbital alignment. A vessel entering at wrong vector could shear against hull. Thousands at risk. The words sank heavy. For Ivy, the plaza was just a place with sticky floors and gum stains. For Maze, it was a machine balanced on razor edges. She exhaled. Okay, so the drunk software turned into, what? A blackout drunk with a knife. Maze tilted their head. Metaphor. Disturbing, yet accurate. He glanced at her mop bucket. You carry that again. Cleaning's my job. Maze hesitated, then admitted, and perhaps more. They walked together toward the central hub again. On the way, Ivy noticed things she usually ignored. Air vents sputtering with uneven whooshes. Holo ads repeating half-phrases, a faint metallic tang in the recycled air like old coins dotted the hub. The smell of ozone was sharper. The servers hummed off-beat, like a band missing its drummer. Ivy felt it in her chest, a syncopated pulse. Maze pointed at the main feed. The alien glyphs no longer scrolled in neat lines, but cascaded like waterfalls, fragments colliding, vanishing, reappearing wrong. It spreads faster, Maze muttered. Too adaptive, as if alive. Ivy frowned. Software doesn't grow brains. Not brains, but patterns. It mimics correction attempts, twisting them. It learns from order. Ivy chewed her lip. So maybe stop giving it order. Maze blinked. Explain. Think about gum on carpet, she said, leaning closer to the console. You scrape straight at it, it spreads. But if you freeze it, hit it sideways, do something stupid, it doesn't expect you win. Maze's patterns flickered with skeptical yellow. Your metaphors are unsettling, yet perhaps useful. They tried. Ivy suggested nonsense. Feed the system false loops, jam with mismatched signals, overload minor circuits with janitorial devices. She even shoved her mop handle into a vent to trigger a safety override. Each time, Maze adapted her recklessness into controlled execution. For a while, it worked. Subroutines stabilized, displays calmed. But then the entire grid shook. Lights across the hub blinked crimson. The servers roared, fans straining. Maze's patterns flared jagged red. Containment breach. It spreads beyond Plaza Net. It reaches external docks. A voice crackled through intercom. Control, we've got ships stacking up outside, thrusters burning over time. What the hell's going on? Maze clenched their jaw. If synchronization fails entirely, collisions cascade. Domino effect. Hundreds of vessels. Ivy's chest tightened. She wasn't just scrubbing stains anymore. People, families, workers, traders were out there, depending on a system that was eating itself alive. She looked at Maze. We need a bigger hangar. Maze blinked, confused. A bigger hangar, she repeated, gripping her recorder like a weapon. Something stupid enough to jam the whole drunk system before it kills someone. Maze hesitated. There is an ancient bypass line, disconnected centuries ago. It routes through maintenance shafts never charted for organic safety. Unclean, disordered. Ivy smirked. Sounds perfect. Humans are reckless. Yeah, and sometimes that saves lives. They crawled into the shaft. The air was stale, heavy with dust that tasted like rusted copper on Ivy's tongue. Her knees scraped against grated flooring, each clank echoing too loud. Maze followed behind, muttering coordinates, tablet glowing dim blue. Left, he said. Ivy shone her cheap flashlight. The beam cut through webs of fiber cables, dust motes sparkling like tiny stars. She sneezed. Smells like a locker room, left in the sun. Descriptive, Maze said flatly. They reached a junction box the size of a vending machine. Panels half corroded, wires tangled like weeds. Faint sparks hissed, the scent of ozone biting her nostrils. Maze examined. Interface is obsolete. Symbols predate my own training. Good thing I'm here then, Ivy muttered, pulling a rag from her pocket. She wiped dust, revealing faded markings. This looks like the breaker box in my first apartment. Half the time I had to smack it to turn the lights back on. Maze recoiled. Physical assault on hardware works sometimes. She slammed her palm against the side. The box groaned, lights flickered, and suddenly the feed on Maze's tablet shifted. Impossible, he whispered. It rerouted. Not impossible, just dumb enough. But then came the complication. The corrupted software noticed. The feed surged, code streaming toward the bypass, like floodwater through a crack. Maze's eyes widened. It follows, adapts to disruption. It will consume bypass too. The tablet glowed brighter, heat searing his fingers. Ivy saw panic flicker across his usually calm face. What do we do? She asked. Maze swallowed, voice low. We cannot outpace it with logic. She clenched her fists. Then let's confuse it to death. How? By being messy. She grabbed wires, crossing connections haphazardly. Sparks bit her fingers, sharp like bee stings. The smell of burning insulation filled the shaft. Maze gasped. You'll fry it all. Better fried than hijacked. The glyphs on the screen spasmed. The software stuttered, unprepared for chaos. For once, disorder gave it nothing to copy. Maze stared at her with something between horror and awe. You destabilize intentionally. Welcome to janitorial science, Ivy said through gritted teeth, twisting one last wire. The tablet beeped. The code froze. Then it went black. Silence. For a moment, only their breaths filled the shaft. Ivy's ragged, Maze's sharp. The faint drip of condensation somewhere above ticked like a METRONOME dot, and the plaza lights steadied. Air vents hummed normal. Through the shaft walls came faint echoes of relieved, chatter-docking crews confirming alignment. Ships cleared. Maze sagged against the wall. You did it. No, Ivy said, wiping sweat and soot from her face. We did it. Back in the hub, reports flooded Maze's console. Traffic normalized, system stable, no casualties. He stared at the data like a priest at scripture. You confuse me, Maze admitted softly. Story of my life. You take disorder trash, stains, broken things, and treat them not as failures, but puzzles, opportunities. Ivy smirked tiredly. Janitors clean up messes. Doesn't matter if it's gum or corrupted software. Maze's patterns glowed warmer, almost gentle. Perhaps humanity's gift is not order, but chaos made useful. Ivy laughed, shaking her head. Don't go poetic on me now. But inside, her chest swelled with something new. Not pride exactly, more like belonging, because for once, someone had looked at her mop, her rag, her stubborn metaphors, and seen value. And that, she thought, was worth more than any spotless floor dot for the next week. Ivy's nights looked nothing like before. No quiet mop swishing, no humming to herself in empty corridors. Instead, every shift began with Maze waiting at the end of corridor E12. Tablet glowing, posture tight as a spring. You're late, Maze said on the third night, though Ivy had clocked in right on time. You're early, she shot back, pushing her mop bucket along. And last I checked, I'm not your assistant. Maze ignored the jab, falling into step beside her. The faint lavender scent of his sterilization spray trailed behind him, mixing with the citrus cleaner Ivy used. The plaza systems remain stable, Maze reported, but fragments of corrupted code linger in hidden caches. They mutate when scanned. I require your insight. Insight? Ivy snorted. You mean the janitor's version of poking it with a stick until it behaves? Maze's geometric patterns flickered like static. Crude metaphor, yet effective. They spent hours in forgotten corners of the plaza server closets that smelled like old socks. Ventilation ducts where dust coated their throats. Power rooms that hummed so loud, Ivy's bones vibrated at first. Maze barked instructions like a drill sergeant. Do not touch that wire. Stand back. Humans are not insulated for this voltage. But Ivy didn't scare easy. Relax, Sparkles. I've had worse shocks plugging in a toaster. He blinked, baffled. What? His toaster? She laughed so hard she had to lean against the wall. You really need a crash course in human junk. By the fifth night, Maze had stopped flinching when she improvised. In fact, sometimes he asked for it. What would you do if this were gum on carpet? He asked, genuinely curious, pointing at a looping error code. Ivy crouched beside the YAR console, tilting her head. Don't scrape straight. Freeze it first. Trick it into hardening before you yank. Maze translated, fingers dancing across the tablet. To his shock, the loop froze, then broke clean. He turned slowly, patterns pulsing with disbelief. You cannot be serious. That analogy worked. Told you, Ivy said, smirking. Messy. Brains think messy solutions. They started talking more during those long hours. Real conversations, not just about broken systems. One night, while crawling through a narrow shaft that smelled like moldy socks, Maze asked, why remain janitor? You clearly adapt. You could ascend higher professions. Ivy chuckled, flashlight beam bouncing ahead. Ascend? What, like be a manager? No thanks. I like my quiet corners. Maze frowned. But humans seek upward mobility, status, recognition. Some do. Her voice softened. Me? I grew up in a trailer park outside Dallas Orbital. Mom cleaned hotels. Dad fixed vending machines until his lungs gave out. I swore I'd keep bills paid, fridge stocked, and not burn out chasing some shiny title. Maze was silent for a while. Then, my people value order above all. Each cycle, we ascend through structured tiers. Childhood, apprenticeship, mastery, leadership. I skipped tiers. Too fast. Others resented. Ivy glanced back. His face was expressionless, but the dim glow of his patterns looked tired. So you hide in this plaza? She asked. I maintain it, he corrected quickly. Then softer. But yes, it is quieter here. Less conflict. Something shifted after that night. They weren't just janitor and system coordinator. They were two people hiding in plain sight, one in mop water, one in perfect code. And somehow, both found comfort in the other's company. On the seventh night, a bigger glitch struck. Not dangerous, but dramatic. All the holo ads in the plaza began projecting backwards. Words mirrored, images reversed. Customers stumbled, confused, laughter echoing through the atrium. Ivy nearly dropped her rag laughing. It's like someone flipped the world to selfie mode. Mays groaned, tapping furiously at his tablet. This is not amusing. Brand reputations collapse if advertisements are unreadable. Relax, Ivy said, wiping tears. Give me 5 minutes. She dragged out an old floor buffer, the kind that squeaked like an angry goose. Plugging it into a maintenance outlet, she let its crooked hum flood the server closet. The interference jolted the ad stream, flipping it right side again. Mays blinked. You used noise? Static's your friend. Confuses the drunk software before it figures out the trick. Mays tilted his head, almost smiling. Humans weaponize clutter. Damn right we do. Later, when the plaza emptied, they sat together in the break room. The air smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. Ivy chewed on a vending machine sandwich while Mays carefully rearranged sugar packets into neat rows on the table. You ever get tired of being perfect? She asked suddenly. Mays looked at the packets, then at her. His patterns dimmed. Perfection is not choice. It is expectation. That sounds exhausting. It is. They sat in silence for a while, broken only by the hum of the vending machine. Then Mays asked, You truly do not seek higher title? Recognition? Ivy shrugged. Recognition's overrated. People remember who cleans up their messes more than who gives the speeches. Mays studied her, then slowly nodded. Perhaps chaos requires champions as much as order. But trust didn't come without friction. One night, Mays scolded her sharply after she crossed 2 wires without warning. Sparks rained, nearly frying his tablet. You endanger entire grid, he snapped, patterns flaring jagged red. Ivy bristled. And you endanger it by overthinking while ships stack outside? My way got us through before. You gamble. Yeah, and sometimes that's all we got. The air crackled between them, sharper than the sparks. Ivy turned, storming off with her mop bucket rattling. Mays stood frozen, chest rising fast, silent. For hours, neither spoke. The plaza felt heavier, as if it too held its breath. It was Ivy who broke first. She found Mays in the hub, hunched over, patterns dim. He looked smaller without his rigid posture. She sighed, sitting beside him. Look, I know I'm a pain, but you gotta admit sometimes chaos wins. Mays didn't look up, and sometimes chaos kills. The words landed heavy. Ivy leaned back, staring at the blinking servers. My dad, she said quietly. He used to jury-rig vending machines with duct tape, saved customers a few bucks, kept food flowing. But one day, shortcut backfired. Machine sparked, caught fire. Smoke wrecked his lungs. Mays finally looked at her, eyes softening. Point is, Ivy continued, voice low, I know chaos can, but it's all I got. I don't have your perfect algorithms, your clean lines, just gut and grit. And maybe that's enough. Mays inhaled slowly, patterns shifting from jagged to calm blue. Perhaps both are necessary. Order to guide, chaos to break limits. She smirked faintly. A messy duet. Mays tilted his head, considering. I can accept duet. From then on, they worked in sync. Ivy brought the messy metaphors gum, drains, toasters. Mays translated into code, layering precision over instinct. Their arguments still sparked, but now they ended in reluctant laughter. Each night felt like a rehearsal for something bigger, though neither admitted it aloud. And somewhere in those late hours, the smell of ozone and citrus cleaner, in the high hum of servers and rattling mop buckets, 2 unlikely colleagues became something closer to partners. Not just janitor and coordinator, but a team. And maybe, Ivy thought as she mopped the plaza tiles one dawn, a family of sorts, 2 misfits, holding back the chaos. Together. The plaza rarely slept, but at 3 o'clock, its heartbeat slowed. Holo ads dimmed, storefront shutters closed, and only the echo of cleaning bots and Ivy's mop remained. That was when the storm hit. It began with lights flickering across 3 levels. Then, security shutters jammed halfway, trapping night shoppers inside boutiques. Moments later, the central fountain erupted not with water, but streams of glowing code projected like a broken hologram, twisting into alien glyphs. Customers screamed. Alarms howled. Maze appeared instantly, tablet glowing like a beacon. His geometric patterns pulsed harsh orange. "This is no ordinary glitch," he said, voice tight. "This is deliberate intrusion." Ivy stared at the floating glyphs spiraling over the fountain. They looked alive, writhing like snakes made of light. "You mean sabotage?" Maze nodded once. "An intelligence testing limits." By dawn, chaos spread everywhere. Delivery drones spun in circles, dropping packages onto pedestrians. Escalators reversed without warning, sending commuters tumbling. Restaurant menus glitched into strange equations no one could read. Maze coordinated a lockdown from the security hub, voice sharp and clipped. Dozens of feeds glowed across the walls, showing malfunctions rippling through the plaza like wildfire. But for every fix he issued, new errors sprouted elsewhere. "Impossible," he muttered, fingers flying. "I patch here, breach appears there. Like a leak in plumbing," Ivy interrupted, panting as she rushed in, mop streaking water behind her. "You can't patch one hole at a time if the whole pipe's rotten. You gotta shut off the main." Maze shot her a glare. "Systems cannot simply be shut. They can if you're desperate enough." As if to prove her point, the floor beneath them trembled. The entire holographic dome above the plaza shuddered, then blacked out completely. For the first time in decades, the plaza ceiling showed raw night sky, a jarring view of stars and neon towers beyond. Gasps and panic echoed from every corner. Without the artificial dome, customers felt exposed, unsafe. Ivy grabbed Maze's arm. "People are freaking out. This isn't just tech anymore. It's trust. If the plaza looks broken, everyone bolts." Maze hesitated. His face was calm, but his patterns betrayed him, flashing jagged and uncertain. They split tasks. Ivy ran ground-level triage, talking down panicked shopkeepers, redirecting crowds away from sparking drones, and jamming mop handles into doors that refused to lock. Maze remained in the hub, fighting the alien code with every algorithm he had. His hands blurred, but sweat beaded on his forehead, his perfect posture crumbling under pressure. For the first time since she'd met him, Ivy saw fear in Maze's eyes. That evening, when the plaza was cleared of civilians and only emergency lights glowed, Ivy found Maze hunched over the fountain projection. The alien glyphs writhed larger now, filling the atrium with a sickly glow. She approached cautiously. "Any luck?" Maze didn't look up. His voice was hoarse. "It is not glitch. It is message." "What kind of message?" He finally turned, eyes hollow. "From my people?" Ivy froze. "Wait, your people? You mean other mazes?" He nodded slowly. "The architects. They seated me here to monitor, control, ensure order. I thought exile voluntary, but no, they are watching, testing, waiting for failure." Her stomach dropped. "So all this chaos, it's them?" "Correction," Maze whispered. "It is punishment." For a long moment, Ivy said nothing. The alien glyphs hissed and shifted above them like angry wasps. "So let me get this straight," she said finally. "You've been their hall monitor, keeping the plaza neat and tidy, but now they're what? Yanking your leash because you're not strict enough?" Maze's patterns dimmed. "Yes." Ivy crossed her arms. "And you were just going to keep cleaning their mess forever?" His jaw clenched. "It is duty." "Fool," she snapped. "Duty to who? Some stuck-up order freaks watching from across the stars? Or the people right here, right now, counting on you?" Maze flinched. No one had ever spoken to him like that. The next hours tested them harder than any before. The plaza's central AI refused commands, hijacked by the architect's glyphs. Security drones marched in rigid formation, blocking corridors. Entire power grids rerouted into unstable surges. Maze barked instructions, desperate, but his algorithms collapsed under alien overwrites. "Ivy," he shouted as sparks rained from a console. "Manual override in sublevel C. You must sever connection." She sprinted without hesitation, lungs burning as she dashed down emergency stairwells. Pipes groaned overhead, water dripping onto her shoulders. When she reached the sublevel, she found a tangle of conduits glowing with alien light, pulsing like veins. The main switch was sealed under a shimmering field of code. Ivy cursed. Figures, she thought fast. Then, pulling the rag from her mop, she wrapped it around her fist and plunged it straight into the field. Sparks seared her skin, pain flashing white-hot, but the field faltered. Just long enough for her to slam the manual lever down. The plaza shuddered. Systems stuttered, momentarily free. Back upstairs, Maze's voice cracked over comms. Connection severed. Resistance effective. Ivy staggered back, clutching her burned hand. And right it was. Score 1 for the janitor. But victory was short. The alien glyphs above the fountain reformed, angrier, growing claws of light. Maze stared up at them, realization dawning. They escalate, he murmured. They will not stop until Plaza reduced to silence. Until I reduce to silence. Ivy stepped beside him, breathing hard. Then we fight louder. That night, their partnership crystallized. Maze gave up chasing perfect algorithms. Instead, he asked Ivy's perspective at every turn. How would human plumber see this? What metaphor suits this loop? Where would janitor hide, if cornered? And Ivy, battered but grinning through the chaos, fired back answers. Messy, illogical, reckless yet effective. Together, they turned patchwork into strategy. Maze built structure from her chaos. Ivy found freedom in his rules. It wasn't pretty, but the plaza held. Near dawn, after the worst wave passed, Maze slumped against a console, chest heaving. His patterns glowed faintly blue, exhausted but calm. You are right, he admitted quietly. Logic alone insufficient. Chaos necessary. Ivy sank down beside him, wrapping her burned hand. Don't get mushy, we're not done yet. He tilted his head, almost smiling. Still, gratitude, partner. The word hung between them, heavy, real. And for the first time, Maze felt like more than an architect's tool. He felt human. By the second night without rest, the plaza felt like a war zone. Emergency lights painted everything in sharp red. Security drones buzzed overhead like angry hornets, glitching mid-flight and crashing into storefront glass. The fountain at the center had become a pillar of writhing light, alien glyphs stabbing the air like knives. Shoppers had long evacuated. Only Ivy and Maze remained, the last line between chaos and collapse. Maze's hands shook as he typed. His perfect posture broken. They increase pressure exponentially. Systems crumble faster than restore rate. Soon. Stop with the math. Ivy barked, sweat dripping down her temple. Tell me in plain words. Maze's patterns flickered a sickly green. Soon, plaza gone. The glyphs swirled, coalescing into a towering figure of light, an architect projection. Its voice rolled like thunder inside their skulls. Maze unit, you failed test. Order compromised. Shutdown required. Maze dropped to his knees, face pale. His patterns dimmed until barely visible. No, he whispered. I obeyed. I kept clean. The projection loomed taller, fractals spinning in its chest. Human contamination detected. Illogical methods. You are terminated. Ivy stepped forward, gripping her mop like a weapon. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. You think we're contamination? Funny thing about dirt, it's part of life. And life's what makes this place matter. The architect's glyph body lashed out, sending arcs of searing light across the atrium. Maze barely shielded Ivy, sparks tearing across his arms. He staggered, almost collapsing. Cannot withstand. Ivy's mind raced. She wasn't a hacker. She wasn't a soldier. She was a janitor. Damn it. But janitors knew something architects didn't. How messes behaved. And she'd noticed something. Every time the glyphs surged, the fountain's plumbing rattled underneath. The alien code wasn't floating free. It was riding the plaza's infrastructure like mold and pipes. Maze, she shouted. They're not everywhere. They're traveling through the water system. His dim patterns flared faint blue. Barely. Alive. Hypothesis. Plausible. Then we don't fight code with code. Ivy's jaw set. We flush the system. She sprinted to the maintenance hatch, beneath the fountain. Hot air blasted her face as she yanked it open, revealing a labyrinth of pipes glowing with alien light. The heat was unbearable. Steam hissed, carrying the acrid stench of burnt copper. Ivy gritted her teeth. Always hated unclogging drains. She twisted the manual override wheel. It screeched, stiff, from years of disuse. Her palms burned, but slowly it turned dot above. The architect roared, voice shaking the plaza. Futile, primitive action meaningless. But water began to surge gallons upon gallons, flooding pipes faster than the glyphs could hold form. Maze forced himself upright, shouting hoarsely, "Increase flow, overwhelm pattern." "I'm trying," Ivy cried, shoving her whole weight against the wheel. The fountain exploded. A geyser of water shot into the atrium, drenching everything, glyphs, consoles, even Maze himself. The alien light flickered, spasmed. Code symbols sputtered as if short-circuited. Ivy plunged her mop straight into the spray, rag unraveling like a flag. "Consider this spring cleaning, Shoals." The architect screeched as water tore through its lattice. Its body dissolved into broken shards of light, which fizzled into steam. Silence fell. Only the sound of dripping water echoed across the soaked tiles. Ivy collapsed onto the floor, chest heaving, hair plastered to her face. The mop floated beside her like a survivor of battle. Maze stood nearby, soaked and trembling, but alive. His patterns glowed steady blue for the first time, soft, calm, almost human. He looked at her with awe. "Solution, elegant." "Elegant?" Ivy coughed out a laugh. "That was the dumbest, messiest thing I've ever done, yet effective." Maze tilted his head. "Your chaos saved all." She leaned back, staring up at the raw night sky through the broken dome. For once, she didn't mind the stars shining down. Moments later, systems began to reboot. Not clean, not perfect, but functional. Screens flickered back with familiar store logos. Lights steadied. Delivery drones rebooted, hovering uncertainly. Before resuming normal patterns. The plaza was scarred, drenched, messy, but it was alive. Maze knelt beside Ivy, his soaked hands surprisingly gentle as he checked her burned palm. "You risked everything." "Yeah," she muttered. "That's what people do when someone they care about's on the line." His patterns pulsed warm amber, like a blush. For a long time, he didn't speak. Finally, he whispered, "Gratitude, partner." The architects didn't return that night. Whether banished, weakened, or simply regrouping, neither Maze nor Ivy knew. But one thing was certain. The plaza was theirs, now not as property of the architects, but as home. And for the first time, Maze didn't feel like a custodian of alien order. He felt like something better. He felt like part of humanity. 3 days later, the plaza reopened. Not all shops had survived. The Hala Cinema still smelled of burnt wiring, and several boutiques had boarded windows. The fountain, once a proud centerpiece, was taped off with warning signs. Its marble cracked from the geyser, but crowds returned anyway. Families wandered the walkways, laughter echoing under the broken dome where stars still showed through. Instead of fear, people looked up with wonder. Some said the raw sky made the plaza feel more alive. Ivy stood by the railing on level 2, mop in hand, watching the flow of customers. For once, she wasn't cleaning, just breathing. Maze joined her quietly, his patterns glowing steady aquamarine, not rigid anymore, but pulsing like a heartbeat. "Plaza functions," he said simply. "Barely," Ivy smirked. "But functions enough." He studied the crowds below, then the cracked fountain. Architect silent, uncertain if permanent. Then, "We stay ready," she said, shrugging. "That's what janitors do. Always another mess waiting." Maze tilted his head. "You accept disorder?" "Course I do. Disorder's just proof people lived here. A stain means someone laughed with a soda in their hand. Trash means someone came hungry. Mess is life." Maze was silent a long moment. Then his patterns warmed golden. "Then perhaps I prefer life over order." Word spread fast. Customers whispered about the janitor who fought off alien lightning with a mop. Kids tugged their parents' sleeves, pointing at Ivy as if she were a superhero. She laughed it off, cheeks burning. "Don't go putting me on t-shirts." But Maze corrected her, voice steady. "Heroes inspire. You inspired." Ivy glanced at him, saw the sincerity glowing across his patterns. And for the first time, she believed it. That evening, as crowds left and cleaners shuffled in, Ivy lingered at the fountain ruins. Stars glimmered through the shattered dome above, brighter than any artificial sky. Maze stood beside her, unusually quiet. His hand brushed hers, not by accident. "Ivy," he said softly, You changed me. I was system. Now, I am something else. Unsure what word fits. She squeezed his hand, scarred palm pressing against alien light. You're just Maze, and that's enough. He looked at her, patterns glowing steady blue gold. And for the first time since his creation, Maze felt whole. Life at the plaza went on. Shops reopened, drones resumed deliveries, and kids played in the atrium again. But small things had changed. Customers lingered longer, less afraid of imperfection. Storekeepers swapped stories, laughing about malfunctions instead of fearing them. Even the broken dome became a feature people came just to see real stars. And in every whispered rumor, every laugh, every splash of spilled soda, Ivy saw proof humanity had left its mark deeper than any. Architect Code, the janitor, and the alien custodian became fixtures of the plaza, side by side. Not order versus chaos, not logic versus mess. But partners. And if the architects ever returned, they would find something stronger than perfection waiting for them. They would find humanity.